there. Would help if my mic was in front of my face. Hey there, Chris here. This is going to be a little bit of a short one today. My partner's on the road. Everybody's running around like their hair's on fire, and it's going to be a short one. I would have loved to have a big blowout celebration for episode 69, which this is, but we're going to have to kind of put that on shelf and hope you like what you hear. Welcome to Inside Integration. My name is Chris. I am joined by no one today. It's just me. I am solo. Our buddy Jayson is on a road supporting some summer tech tour shows in the Pacific Northwest. So right now he's probably hauling boxes and putting them into a creepy van and heading from Portland to Boise. So we'll catch up with Jayson when he's back. But what is real fortunate for me, at least, instead of talking to myself for 5 minutes before the show with show prep, we actually got some feedback on the last episode, which was the hill that you die on, where we talked all about what different things you have philosophy wise, and different gear. So Makita versus Milwaukee, or control systems, or whatever that is. And we actually got some feedback, which is great, because that's really kind of saves my ass for coming up with content for the show. But the two pieces that we got back were real interesting, and they weren't things that we covered on the last episode, and we probably should have, to be honest with you, because these are two big ones. The first one being what network gear you use, and I got a couple of emails about just the differences between and I like this versus I like this. And what was interesting was it was asked around about this in the last week or so, and Ubiquiti versus Arraknis are really the two that kind of come up. And I know that there's different network vendors out there. There's Netgear, there's a whole bunch. A lot of guys use Cisco for their super high end ones, if you've got folks trained in that discipline, because it does it definitely takes a lot of training. It's not just drag and drop. But the two that really popped up were Ubiquiti and Arraknis. And obviously, unless you've been under a rock, Ubiquiti has kind of come out, and they've got a huge blend of products, whatever you could need. They have 10 gig stuff, they have 1 gig stuff, they have access points and that sort of thing. And that was kind of my introduction into Ubiquiti, was via their access points. At one point, they came out, they had disruptive pricing. They seemed like they were built pretty well, and my partner and I started using them for outdoor WAPs, and we're talking 6, 7, 8 years ago or so, whenever, back when it wasn't really a trivial thing to manage them. You needed a piece of software, and we actually used to run it on a Raspberry Pi, which was kind of weird for us at that point, but it worked out really well. Let us manage the wireless, and it worked, and it was reliable. But they've since turned that disruptive pricing into an entire line that you can absolutely do the largest home, a giant office or whatever with, and it is very reliable. The management interface is really, really good. It makes it so easy to kind of do these things. And before I start sounding like a commercial for Ubiquiti, it's pretty wild, because here's this company that kind of came out of nowhere, and they've grown, and they really don't offer any support to speak of. And that was always sort of the drag with them at one point, was, if you ever had a problem with something, it was a ticket system, if you could even get a response, and whatever. And those days are gone, but there still isn't like a call somebody on the phone and get support for the specific problem that you're having, which I don't think is as much of a problem anymore, because this stuff is really easy to use, and we've definitely leveled up in terms of as an industry on how to troubleshoot and how to do basic network things, right? We've all gotten better, so that's less of an issue, not being able to get support. And again, they make a great line of products. I mean, you'd be kind of hard pressed to not find a ton of dealers in an area using Ubiquiti for everything, for the full stack. But the counterpoint to that was there were more than a few who, really kind of were very wary of the support situation with Ubiquiti. Oh, what happens if I have a bad piece of gear? And they steered a little bit more towards Arraknis. And if you don't know, Arraknis is um it's basically the I'm struggling for words here, and I'll probably cut this out later. Arraknis is essentially a company that's owned by Snap. They were sort of the first network company that was associated with Snap AV. So Snap AV used to sell Arraknis network gear. Again, full range products. Some of them were good. Had a couple of bad ones back in the day, and I'm sure a lot of other people have. But they've consistently Snap as a parent company has consistently kind of added to this, right? So, with Control 4, you had Package when they bought Package. And if you don't know Package, Package kind of rose to prominence, at least on my radar. They had the only really reliable access point that could connect to Crestron devices back in the day. So when we're going, this is a real deep track. The TPMC 8X was a Crestron ViewSonic handheld touch panel, and the network card in it was like notorious for being difficult to connect to, and you'd have lockups and you wouldn't be able to control your system and that kind of thing. And obviously that is not something that you want in a control system, especially when it's the device that you're going to pick up to try and control the TV that's in front of you. And what myself and a lot of dealers found was that these pack edge devices, the wireless access points, were really, really good for some reason at talking to these Crestron devices, the handheld remote, the handheld touch panel, those kind of things. And Pack Edge, to their credit, kind of leaned into it, right? And they really started to market towards custom integrators. So they had different access points for different styles and that kind of thing, and a lot of things that were like marketed towards CIs. Like, yeah, you're going to put this in a house, you're going to do this. Your roaming is going to be good because it's really kind of purpose built and tweaked for devices that you're going to have in your home, instead of the other part of the market that this is a very small wedge of, and which a lot of integrators thought was really cool. Well, Control 4 bought Pack Edge, and then Snap bought Control 4. And I might be getting my timeline wrong here, but basically they kind of mushed everybody together. At some point, they bought Access Networks, which was a really great, they were a company that they would pre-configure your entire network for you and then ship it, and you just install it based on their directions. Had a lot of dealings with those guys. They were really, really great, really easy to do, especially for large projects. Like, you could send them, hey, I need all these VLANs set up and everything else, and they would just ship you boxes, and you just pop them in the rack, and things would work. And when you had a problem, you called them, and they would help you out. And they used I forget whether it was Cisco gear or Netgear gear. I think it was Cisco. And it was really great. Well, Snap bought them too. So now you've got this, you've got this ball of network companies where you've got Arraknis, Package, and Access Networks, and you've got hardware and know-how and everything else. So there's a lot of dealers who will, swear by Arraknis, whether they're Control 4 dealers who are using, Arraknis devices to, get to their certain level, or Snap dealers that are doing the same thing. Everything works really well through Oversee, right? So that management aspect of it becomes a lot easier. And I think it's an interesting topic because it's almost, the CI world kind of breaks right between those two, right? Like, you've got a ton of guys who do Ubiquiti, and you've got a ton of guys who do Arraknis. And I'm kind of disappointed that we didn't think about it when we were talking about this the first time, because once I read that email, it was like, wow, that is absolutely obvious. Again, different strokes for different folks, right? Like, I've seen so many giant projects that are run by Ubiquiti. I've seen a ton of giant projects that are run by Arraknis. I've seen Savant dealers use Arraknis because they just absolutely love the user interface and the Oversee monitoring and all of those things. And they're both great. It's Coke and Pepsi, right? Like, here's, whatever you pick your flavor and whatever you want to do. And I think it speaks to how absolutely integral the network is at this point, right? Like, you can't do a project, no matter how big, without a reliable network, right? Like most guys that get out into the field and do these projects, you're not ever going to use, and you can't really use, Comcast's router access point multifunction combination. It's just not going to fly, right? Like we have specific needs, and these kind of nail it. And whether you're Ubiquiti or Arraknis, it's there's really not a there's not enough of a differentiator. I think it really is just kind of personal taste, a lot like Makita, Milwaukee, DeWalt, right? Like, yeah, everybody makes drills. They're all pretty reliable. Battery technology, once you're bought into an ecosystem and once you train your team on these things, that's who you want to stick with. And I don't think you can go wrong between either one of those. um Along the same lines, the other the other feedback that we got was to dig in a little bit more on control systems. And here's where things get a little bit more interesting. There are quite a few players in the market at this point, and you've got your Control 4, which is probably the biggest out of all of them. You've got your Savant, which their reputation for having cool infrastructure products like video over IP and AVB audio and that kind of thing, and just a really nice user interface like that gets them in there too. But then you've got a couple other ones out there, and I mean, I hate to hesitate. I don't want the negative connotation of like calling these guys a dark horse, but they're definitely, they're not the flashiest or anything else, but like RTI. Like, I have dealers who I talk to all the time who swear by RTI. And one of the reasons that they swear by RTI is because it's a completely customizable interface. And in a world of, Control 4 basically dictating what the user interface is going to be, and Savant dictating what the interface is going to be, and Crestron Home dictating what the interface is going to be, here comes RTI, and hey, you can make these pages look however you want. I was just on a project in Vegas for another manufacturer, and I ran into the RTI guys on site, and we were kind of walking through and showing, I used to be a programmer, and I just, every opportunity to nerd out on something like that. I'm looking at the touch panel and checking out the UI, and they're showing me they've got this, floor plan of a home, and it's all custom. And oh no, yeah, it wasn't really that hard at all. We were able to deploy this thing. And it kind of struck me as like, wow, I should really take a look at these guys. Again, not that we're shilling for RTI here, but I thought it was really interesting. And they're sort of the dark horse candidate, right? Like, they've been chugging along. I mean, man, I remember doing RTI stuff way back where it was 418 megahertz handheld candy bar remotes, and we used them because they were reliable. But it's good to see that they're here and they're still going strong, and there's still a use case for it, and dealers still swear by them, right? Like, you could totally find a fanatical RTI dealer who will just, be positive about these guys all day long. And that's kind of impressive to me. Like, here's this company, and they're just chugging along, and they're doing their thing, and they're kind of under the radar, right? But like, it's reliable and it works great. And that was kind of a surprise to me. So, once I saw that, and I started calling some of the dealers I know, like, yeah, RTI, it's great. We swear by them. We use them for, residential stuff, right? So in a boardroom or, in a doctor's office or whatever, like, hey, apparently it's a pretty interesting thing. And I had no idea, and I probably should have. And along the same lines with that, you've got plenty of dealers who use universal remote. Like, it is, universal remote control has been around forever. It's literally in their name. They've been the universal remote control people for a very long time. They have a great offering across, every segment of installation that you might want to do, from very large projects to just one room. I need a clicker, and, I needed to do something more than the Apple TV remote or whatever. And, yeah, man, they're great too. And it just kind of goes to show, like, this is a real interesting time for custom integration, because you really do have a palette of brands to choose from, depending on what is important to you as a dealer and what is important to your clients as, the people who have to live with the system. And it's super important. Like, we should all know all about these things. We should know about these options, if even just to be able to offer something good to our clients that is a good fit, right? Like, we are the concierge of cool. We should probably know when you walk into, somebody's condo, it's like, well, okay, maybe this isn't a full-blown Savant system, but I can get you into a URC remote for this room. You could do this. And oh yeah, by the way, the app will, let you play your Sonos or whatever throughout. Um, it's a great time to be an integrator because man, you remember back in the day, it was like, and it feels weird going back in the day without Jayson here since he's so much older than me. Um, but it used to be it was Crestron or AMX or Pronto, right? Like these were your three big ones, and it was um, different styles for each. You could do, you needed a programmer on site and on staff and on site to do AMX or Crestron, but then Pronto was definitely for the smaller jobs and universal remotes and that kind of thing. Audio ease and audio access, right? There's quite a few that were in there, but like these days there's a lot available still. We haven't really seen this, constricting, and it's kind of a nice thing to be, part of an industry that you've got that choice, right? Like not everybody's interface looks the same. You might have a client who is all about, the Savant aesthetic, or you may have a client who is totally fine with the Control 4 aesthetic and wants to be able to, wants more flexibility or whatever. And that all goes back to being educated as an integrator and knowing what your client likes and knowing what to sell, being familiar with this stuff so that, when you do pull in the job, you've got somebody who can actually do like RTI on staff. Obviously that's, kind of a consideration. But yeah, just thought it was real interesting. And those two things, there isn't a whole lot of real talk in this industry about control system versus control system. Now, obviously, you people sell this thing against that thing or whatever, but at the baseline, they're all pretty reliable. They all work pretty well as long as you've got a, real great network behind them. It really does come down to personal preference and what your team knows and what you can, develop effectively and deploy effectively and without a whole lot of service headaches or anything else. And it's there really isn't one that's better than the other. Like you can't just look at the palette of these things and say, oh yeah, Josh AI is so much better than this. It's like, nope, it's just a different flavor. It's just, hey, voice control is important to me, or the interface that Josh offers on their touch panels and app. Yeah, that's important to me too. Or these partners work better with these guys or these guys. There's really a flavor for everybody. So, instead of getting hung up on these things, and I know as dealers, there's things like, accommodation programs and the training that's required to be a dealer of a certain line or whatever, but that's, there isn't a ton. There really isn't a ton of differentiation here. And there is absolutely the right size peg to fit into the hole that you need it to. So, yeah, good time to be an integrator. So besides the continuation of the hill to die on conversation, and you can tell I'm grasping at straws here. It's a lot easier when there's somebody else doing this with me. But that somebody is driving a truck between Portland and Boise today. I wanted to talk a little bit about processes and what processes you use, and in your business and your daily dealings. And there's quite a few things that are out in the landscape, like, do you use Google Docs? Is that where you are? Is your proposal in a Google Sheets? Is it, are your policies and procedures just kind of laid out in a Google? Are you on Team Microsoft? Do you do things that way? Is it your proposals in an Excel sheet and you're feeding stuff back and forth to QuickBooks, whatever? I've gone through, I think, all of these things, and my partner and I ran a business on Google at one point, and it worked out really well. Every proposal again was in a Google sheet. Everybody had access to it. We had a template and it worked out great. Different different things for different projects would go into, a client's file. We avoided putting passwords in there, but I know some people do, which is probably not a great idea. But different things, like we had these things accessible to any technician who would go out. You could pull out your phone, you can go onto the company Google site, and you could see notes for a particular installation, see where the bodies were buried, see where wire labels were, and that kind of thing. We put pull sheets in there and everything else, and it was good, but it sort of blobbed everything together. Now, obviously, everything was by client, and that kind of made things easier to pick through. And we would save our we would back up our control 4 programming files and our Lutron files in Google Drive, and back that up to another offsite server and that kind of thing. But I think what I'm trying to get across here is it is absolutely important to have some kind of process where, is this stuff just living on your laptop? That's probably not great for being able to, share that information with other members of your team. Or if you're a one-man show, like God forbid, man, you open that van door and that laptop hits the ground, and now you're kind of screwed. Um, not that that's ever happened to me or anything like it, several times, but where do these things live? And I think what I kind of want to open up here is I want to open up that dialogue. Like, what is working for you? Is it Google? Is that the thing? Is it iPoint? That's another big one, man. iPoint as a quoting solution is really gaining a lot of favor with a lot of dealers who maybe they don't want to be in the D tools environment, or maybe they don't want to be in the projects 360 environment, right? For whatever reason, personal preference or whatever. But iPoint is definitely one that's coming up. It lets you track deals. It spits things out to pick lists and orders and that kind of thing. And I know D Tools does the same stuff, including a lot of your system design. And all of these things have cloud functions or whatever. So I guess what I'm asking is, what is working for you? And based on based on being encouraged by the couple of emails I got from the last one, I'm asking, give me that information. Let me know. I'd love to talk about it more. Where what is working? Is it Dropbox with a whole bunch of different client folders? I worked for a giant company, and Dropbox was what we used. And in that Dropbox, there was a hierarchy of folders for every single project. There was engineering drawings, there was the Crestron files, there was, job specific notes and that kind of thing. And that system worked really well. We had our own, we used AutoCAD. So the AutoCAD files would go in there, and, Dropbox was it. It worked great. And, but it's funny to look back at it now, and we're talking 7-8 years ago, where wow, okay, we were really running this giant company with huge projects on Dropbox, and come to think of it, it worked without a real hiccup. Like, there was no, as long as we maintained our Dropbox subscription and everybody had the Dropbox app, it was a pretty great thing, and it worked really well. So that's what I'm curious about. To anybody who might be listening, the few of you here, is what process do you use, and what are you using to share information, within your team, within your company, to trade partners, that kind of thing? Like, what is it? Is it Bluebeam for, for documentation and for blueprint editing and that sort of thing? I'm really curious to see what's out there and what works. And, I'll leave it there, because I really, without a partner, don't have a ton to talk about. And I am certain that nobody out there really wants to listen to me too much. So if you made it this far, I really do appreciate you sticking with me here. And it's been a pleasure. Thanks for joining us.